Hello everyone, what is up and welcome back to the channel iRumors. Today's video is going to be my 6 months review of the iPhone 15 Pro Max right here. It's finally been 6 months. We've done a lot of testings. Of course, the camera testing was one that we didn't do, but other than that, we've really tested the phone a lot. Been using it regularly, having it as my main phone, using it really to its maximum potential, really pushing it to its limits. And today, I mainly just want to talk about my 6 months experience of using this phone. 6 months is a pretty long period, and I really hope that I can cover all the pros and cons that I've been facing and some details that I want to talk about. So without further ado, let's get started right into the review. The first thing that we're going to talk about is the build quality of this phone. I didn't take this phone out of the case ever since day one. It has had this transparent case that I got. The case is pretty damaged, but yeah, never took out of the case, and the phone had a screen protector ever since day one. And as you can see here, there's not a single dent or a scratch on this phone. Really hoping I can maintain this, except for this, I don't know if you all can see, but there's just a small scratch at the camera module because this phone has been falling on rock, bare concrete. But despite all that, this really looks flawless, a really solid build quality. I would say I've seen a lot of 15 Pro Max breaking. Thankfully mine, thanks to the case, is really good. I think I'm soon going to be changing to a bumper case, but let's see how that goes. Like in all our reviews, we always start off the review ever testing with the Geekbench. So let's quickly run the CPU benchmark. Okay, now we've got both the Geekbench CPU and the GPU benchmarks done. Let's take a quick look at the results right now. Let me bring it closer, and here you can see the first time that we run the benchmark was when we first unboxed this phone and doing the first ever review. Doing the first ever benchmark, the single core was 2890 and the multi-core was 7139. And fast forward it to now, the recent benchmark that I just did is 2915 for the single core and 7151 for the multi-core. That just shows that the overall improvement of the phone, such a consistent improvement. The ones that I took in October are slightly higher, but overall when you look at it from the first one to the one that I just did, the improvement is pretty significant. But sadly, that isn't the case for the GPU benchmark, because the first ever GPU benchmark was 27,374 and the recent one was 27,319. So that's a slight improvement. But overall, I would say that the phone is actually performing much better than how it did when it initially came out. Now we saw in the battery test video that the 15 Pro Max lasted around 12 hours 30 minutes, and I was genuinely very impressed with how it turned out, because 12 hours 30 minutes around the same timing as my S22 Ultra and never had a problem with it. But sadly, that isn't how the battery turned out in real world usage. The battery was really horrendous. Average day of me charging it up to around 80%, I only get around maximum 7 hours of screen time with a 2 hour 3 minutes of screen idle. So that's, let's say, around 9 hours. That's really pushing it to its limits. That's really the best. I use this phone for any of my games. If I want a game, I usually use my Android phone to game, and I don't really use this for any gaming intensive tasks. Despite me always having the Maxis battery pack to have a quick charge, I always have to carry around my charger wherever I go, because even the Maxis battery pack just can't really cut it out for the battery usage on this, because it's really depleting a lot, and the Maxis battery pack probably can just give me around a 60 to 70% of on my phone. Then after that, it will deplete and I have to charge it again. Yeah, you can definitely tell me if you want to complain so much about the battery, you can just put the phone on low power mode and just save the battery. Yeah, I can definitely do that, and yeah, the phone definitely lasts longer when I put it on low power mode. Well, that's definitely not a surprise to any of us, because low power mode is meant to make the battery last longer. Because everyone who did a battery test video, this phone actually lasts much longer. And even during my own battery test, I didn't put this phone on low power mode, and the phone was technically just keep on running without turning the screen off. So it was on a much heavier load, and the phone lasted much longer. And on real world usages, it does. To me, I feel like the battery is supposed to last long. Even without us manually limiting the phone using the low power mode, the phone has to last long, and this phone just wouldn't do it for me. You always have to carry around the battery pack and my charger. It's not either the battery pack or the charger, it's always both together. So that's always such a hassle for me. So this is my battery health and the cycle count. Now my phone has, after 6 months, dropped to 99%, and the cycle count is at 188 cycles. And the 99% battery health, I think, is definitely due to me putting the phone at 80% limit. Yeah, this is supposed to show the 80% limit, but I'm currently running the iOS 17 beta version, so I guess this is just a beta problem, because I just updated to the beta version right before shooting this review. I think this is a bug, but yeah, I do have the 80% charging limit up on this. But even the 80% charging limit is usually a hit and miss, because it always charges past the 80% limit even when I have the limit on, and usually I'm the one who has to look at the charger, and sometimes I see the phone is at 100% and then I plug it out. So the 80% charging limit is usually a hit or miss. I feel like the action button is something that I totally overlooked in my review. I don't remember mentioning it in any of my reviews because that's something that I don't even use nowadays. So yeah, I totally overlooked on that. In my 6 months of using this action button, I think I would have barely used it less than 10 times. I really haven't real use case for the action button. The focus mode, silent mode, camera, torchlight, I do have a few features. I can even put a shortcut in there. And other than that, all the other tasks are basically all those that I have in the control center. And just putting on the control center is much more convenient than, actually like pressing the button up. For example, I have the camera set up right now. I just set it up right in front of you. So let's say I want to take a photo on my phone. And when I press it open, I have 3 options in front of me. I can either force touch here and open the camera, or pull on the control center, press the camera, or I can just press and hold the action button to open the camera. When you look at it, the delay from the action button is actually much longer. So due to this, I don't really find an actual use case for the action button. I really wish that they had just kept the old mute and turn on switch, which really holds the old aesthetic. Just because it doesn't work for me, I'm not going to say that it's totally useless. It's definitely useful for many people who are using it for any shortcuts and things like that. That might definitely be useful, but for me, not really. The maximum brightness of 2000 nits is actually such a blessing. As you can see right here, I'm actually under direct sunlight and the viewing angle is not even disrupted, and I don't even have to manually increase the brightness, because as you can see here, once I'm under sunlight, thanks to the auto brightness on this phone, it immediately goes to full maximum brightness and even increases to 2000 nits, and I have no issues in viewing the content of this phone. That's something that I didn't get when I was using my 13 mini. It's a subtle feature, but definitely really useful. But that doesn't come without its disadvantages. Despite the phone having great viewing angle thanks to 2000 nits brightness, it definitely does come with its own advantages, such as phone heating and shorter battery life. And that you can never complain about it, because the brightness definitely uses more battery. For a brighter viewing screen, you definitely have to gear up on battery life. I definitely wouldn't blame the phone for this, as this is a necessity, because the older phones have definitely, once the phones are out of their, after the phone heat up, they start dimming. There will be certain problems from that. So this phone not having that issue is definitely an advantage, but you won't notice the heat in the battery life if you don't use it for outdoors for too long. If you use it outdoors for a prolonged period of time, that is when you actually start noticing the heat and the battery life issue. But other than if you're suddenly outdoors and you just need it for like a few seconds of increased brightness, you wouldn't notice the battery draining difference that easily. But for me, I've noticed it because I've used it outdoors for a substantial period of time and just one go. As for the camera on the 15 Pro Max, I'm currently shooting from the front-facing camera of the 15 Pro Max in 4K 60 FPS without any microphone, as you can see here. I really have no complaints about the front-facing camera, and that also has to go with me not really using the 15 Pro Max to shoot any of my videos. So that's another thing, but I don't have any complaints about it, which doesn't mean that there's an improvement. I really feel like this is actually pretty much very similar to my 13 mini that I used to shoot all my videos. I'm not going to be complaining about the rear camera, but in my real world testings, I really found that the zoom and some of the features on the 15 Pro Max has been slightly bad compared to my S22 Ultra. A 2-year-old Samsung phone beating out the latest and greatest iPhone was something that I wasn't really expecting. The cinematic video is where the phone really excels, especially as you can see in this small video clip that I took of this food. It really gives this elevated look for certain food, so it really has this cool aesthetic purpose. I really feel like the cinematic mode is only meant for aesthetic purposes. And the last thing that I want to talk about is the size and weight of this phone. I technically overlooked the size and weight of this phone fully, because it wasn't even like a difference for me, because for me, I've always been using big phones and heavy phones. And heavy phones, I mean the S20 Ultra was such a heavy phone, so coming from such big phones, I don't really see a difference in this. But when I use this phone and when I go to smaller phones like the 13 mini, that is when I actually see the actual differences on this phone. But for those of you who are coming from smaller phones, I think as time goes on, you will definitely get used to it. And I guess it's better to have a bigger phone, because even the bigger phone's battery are quite bad when I get the smaller phone, which is going to have a much worse battery life than this. In the end, I would say that the 15 Pro Max is actually much better than when the phone first came out. When it first came out, it had multiple issues like heating, battery draining, and just glitching. There were a lot of issues on this phone. But now I think after 6 months, actually much more stable, and I have lesser negative things to say about this phone. Other than the battery life, I don't have any other problems with this phone. Overall, it has gotten much better, but that doesn't mean I'm going to be recommending you the 15 Pro Max. I still wouldn't recommend the 15 Pro Max to any of you if you're going to buy it. Using anything like the 13 or the iPhone 14, I definitely wouldn't recommend you to change to the iPhone 15 series, and that's definitely due to it not being such a big upgrade or such a big jump for any of you. Other than the USB-C port, I don't see any other differences that you should really consider upgrading, because the lack of features just don't justify the price that we are paying for and the upgrade. Anything below that, if you're using the iPhone 12, 11 or the 10 series, and anything below that, the upgrade is definitely justifiable. So the 15 Pro Max still doesn't stand in my recommendation, but these are my thoughts after the 6 months of using it. Whatever I felt, I put it in this review, and yep, this is what I feel after 6 months of using this. The one thing that I hope from this video is that it helps those of you who are deciding on getting the 15 Pro Max, because after 6 months there have been a lot of Amazon offers and a lot of maybe credit card or deal or maybe telco offers that a lot of it will be up. The phone prices would have dropped in some places. So if you're considering on getting the 15 Pro Max, this is my thoughts. I definitely wouldn't recommend you to do it, but if you want, it's still in the end, it's up to you. With that, thank you so much for watching, and if you like what you saw, don't forget the like button, don't forget to get subscribed, turn on notifications so you get notified whenever I post a video. Every single subscribe, every single like will really motivate me to do a much better content and continue improving in all the reviews and all the videos I make. With that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch all of you in the next one. Bye bye.